Growing as educators means reflecting on our own practices and listening and learning from our colleagues.
As teachers, it's easy to get lost within the walls of our classrooms and schools.
Our goal is to connect teachers and educators and share what's happening in our district.
This is the Santa Barbara Unified Looped In podcast.
Connecting educators, sharing ideas, and improving instructional practices. I'm Gina Pearce.
And I'm Rob Cooper.
And we are your hosts for the Santa Barbara Unified School District Looped In podcast. It's hard to believe that SB Unified has been using Neo as our learning management system since 2011. Our shift from personal gradebooks to a learning management system has transformed the way teachers teach, the way students access information, and allows for teachers, parents, and counselors to have interventions with students that are struggling.
In this episode, we will be looking at Neo and highlighting some of the ways teachers are leveraging the assignment features in their classrooms. Neo's come a long way in the past 9 years, and it has so much more to offer than just simply being a gradebook. Our goal is to highlight some of its newest features that you might not know about and give you ideas on how you can integrate them into your classes. Our focus will be on Neo CourseKit, an alternative to Google Classroom, and Neo Willbanks, which teachers can tag questions to create different test versions for their students. You will get an inside look at how two teachers are doing this in their classrooms to impact student learning with Neo.
I first made my way to San Marcos High School where I interviewed Lera Wilbanks, a social studies teacher and a yearbook teacher that is currently using Neo CourseKit with her AP Government class. She was using Google Classroom but felt like it was really cumbersome to get the students' grades from Google Classroom over to Neo. She was using Google Classroom almost every day since she has a hybrid class where students are doing projects with G Suite apps like Slides and Docs, until she heard about CourseKit, an alternative to Google Classroom, in Neo's quarterly newsletter.
So I had read about in the Neo kind of upcoming quarterly statements what was some of their new developments. I read about Google CourseKit, and so like I said, the first 9 weeks I taught the class, I taught a group of students and I used Google Classroom. And then I decided the second 9 weeks, because I was starting with a fresh group of students, the same curriculum, I was just going to run the whole through Google CourseKit, which is an element in Neo. And I've been so happy. We're about our 6th week into this course, and it has been really great. Some of the similarities I'll talk about first between the two are that it's a great way to take your Google Docs and give them to students, and you can force them to make a copy, or they can just view it, or they can just edit it. It's a little bit trickier. It's not as smooth doing that through Google CourseKit as it is through Google Classroom, but you still can do it. When they're writing on it, you can see what's happening. And then when they submit it to you, like with Google Classroom, the document shuts down to them, so they don't have access to it. So it's great for English teachers who are collecting papers from students. It just completely shuts down. And it does also have an originality of report, which I haven't really used yet, but that's there as well. And then, of course, the best part about it is the grading. It's right there in Neo. So after I create a Google CourseKit assignment, which is just like creating any other online assignment in Neo, after I do that, and I put the assignment in there, when I go to grade it, I just launch the Google CourseKit, and it looks like Google Classroom, very similar. And then I can click on the individual student's work. I can comment on their work. I can create a rubric to put in there, and I can add comments. And when I enter a grade there, that grade goes into the Neo gradebook. It also is a place where you can type in comments, and then those comments are saved, so you can copy and paste those comments, and almost like a comment library, which is kind of nice too. It holds on to the actual submission until I return it, just like with Google Classroom, where you have to return the items. And once I've returned them all, that's when the students can see their grade in Neo and see my comments in Neo as well. And then they can get the document back.
I asked Lara to tell me her favorite features of CourseKit and what she liked best about it. Here's what she said.
I like that I don't have to bring grades over to it like I do with Google Classroom. That's probably what I like best. It's saving me so much time. I also like that, like Google Classroom, it when they submit it, it's mine and they can't see it. So it really brings down cheating and sharing papers and things like that. I think, without that, Neo would have really lost out to Google Classroom, because that's the ball game right there, is being able to get the students' documents without them being able to then share it with other friends and things like that.
Neo CourseKit is still in the beta phase, and like everything else with Neo, they're always looking for feedback on ways they can improve their product. Lara shared some of the things she has come across that may be a little different from Google Classroom that could be improved.
It does take a few steps to either, and I have to decide and be intentional about forcing to make a copy, or do I just want them to view a document that I'm giving them, or do I want them to all of us edit it? That's a real simple process in Google Classroom, and it's not as simple in Google CourseKit. I basically have to take the document, open it in a new tab, take out the word to edit, back up the URL to the word edit, write the word copy, and that's how I force make a copy. And so I just have to remember to do that. If I forget to do that, then I'm giving them a view only, which isn't terrible, but that's the default of when you're giving a student a document in Google CourseKit. It makes it a view only. So if you want them to have their own copy of it, you need to do those steps.
Yeah.
But if you want to edit, if you want everyone to edit the document, like today I did a Google slide that all of my students were working on a different slide, and so we were working on one slide deck together. That's easy to do. You just go in and change the share setting. Yeah, there is a rubric in Google CourseKit, but I'm currently not using it because it's not as slick as just a regular Neo assignment, in that there is a rubric and I can do a bunch of clicks, but I still have to physically enter the grade. So I don't really understand what the point of that is, because I think one of the best features of Neo rubrics is that click, 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 and that grade is in. And that's not the case currently with Google CourseKit.
Despite some of CourseKit's shortcomings to Google Classroom, Lara finds Neo CourseKits well worth the switch.
I would suggest to teachers to try one out. And it's super easy to start. You just open a new assignment, and as you're choosing what kind of assignment to create, you'll see it right there, Google CourseKit, and you put it there. And you can either give them a document that you want them to work on, or if you just are going to say, go write an essay or go do a quick write in a Google Doc, and this is where you upload it, you can just have them upload it to that Google CourseKit. So it's not just that you have to give them the documents. It could be a place where they're just creating their own stuff and giving it to you. But I would really suggest giving it a try and seeing how it goes.
Yeah, so if you're a Google Classroom user, Neo is trying to compete, so it's seeming like you should try it out and see what it has to offer and see if it's something that'll work for you. The next Neo tool that has come a long way is Neo Quizzes. You might be thinking, I know what it has to offer. I did too, until I heard about the Willbanks, which to me has been a game changer in how you can use quizzes. I made my way out to Santa Barbara High School, where I interviewed Reussner, a math teacher that is currently using Neo Quizzes for all of his assessments in his Math 3 and Pre-Calculus classes. Here is one way Chris is using Neo Quizzes with his classes.
Currently, if you assign a group assignment, if you assign a group test, it is possible that they will work together well and they'll ask questions of each other and collaborate. But it's also possible that one student sort of will do most of the work and then the other students will just kind of copy what they put. The test bank is nice. It's a nice feature because it allows you to put in maybe 10 different problems that are the exact type of problems, but a student would randomly be assigned one of those 10, and then just tell the students that this is a group assignment. They can work through it together, and it requires them to talk through a concept without being able to just be given the answer. They actually have to do the calculations.
Chris finds that his students are more engaged and talking more about the process behind the mathematics, since he is now able to assign random questions from his quiz banks. Chris explains how the quiz banks work.
So what you can do is not only can you assign a certain topic, whatever it is, you could say graphing a line, so that you can go through and you can put 10 or 12 questions that are graphing questions, but then you can also assign tags. So you could sort of deem which ones you felt like were easier questions, more difficult, or which ones were perpendicular or parallel, or certain topics within that that bigger topic. And then when you randomly assign those questions to the student, you could say, oh, I want the kid to have 5 easy questions, 2 perpendicular slope questions, and it would randomly assign those, but it would also, depending on what other tags you added, it would give them that number of questions.
And the nice thing about that is it probably generates a different test for each kid.
Yes, it grades a different test for each kid, which is good, obviously, on test day. But I also think it's really good for review that every student is getting a slightly different review, because it allows them to work together cooperatively without just being given answers.
Right.
They can't sit back. At the end of the day, they got to do the work.
In my interview with Lara, she also talked about Neo quizzes and how excited she was about tagging questions in Willbanks for her AP government class. Here is what she had to say in my interview with her.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this new feature of tagging questions in Neo quizzes. First of all, I'm really excited about something I learned just this past year about Neo quizzes, in that I can make a very large test bank, and then I can choose just maybe 10 of the 50 questions, and all of my students can get 10 different questions. So it's really going to cut down cheating knowing that I can do that, which is great. But tagging them, if I'm going to do that, I want to make sure that there are some things I want them to see. So, for example, we just finished our unit in my AP government class on the presidency, and I wanted to make sure that my students saw a question about Federalist Paper number 70, and a question about the powers of the presidency, and a question about the president and how he engages with the press. So I tagged those questions, and then when I made the test, I said 1 question from Fed 70, 1 question from powers of the presidency, 1 question from, and so on and so on. And then the rest, it could be just random. So it was a way for me to ensure that I was getting a kind of a good mixture, and I was making sure I was testing them on the things I wanted to test them on. So that's one way that I've used it. I also give my students almost a daily 4-question multiple choice exam, because in the AP exam, they've just got to be seeing multiple choice questions. It's a skill they've got to learn how to be able to read it and figure out what's happening there. So I want them to get some of those questions again. So every time I did a quiz, I would tag it quiz. So I would take it from that question bank and I would tag it quiz, that question. And so this way, when I wrote the exam, I created the exam so that one of the things that was tagged on the exam was the word quiz. So every student made sure they got at least 1 question that was review from those daily quizzes that we took. So that's how I've been using tags, which has been really fun. I think we're going to see even more creative ways that teachers can use that tagging feature.
I absolutely agree. And one of the things that I think is really cool that I personally use is you can actually have multiple test banks in one single quiz. So you can have a test bank on factoring if you're a math teacher, and a test bank on combining like terms, and then you can tag those questions in there if you choose easy, medium, or hard, or whatever it is, and then pulling from different banks, which is really awesome. And then you can share those banks with your PLCs, either school, or you can have it be district-wide, so you guys can collectively be coming up with a bank that you're all pulling questions from. I think it's just a very powerful thing. And the whole idea of having different versions, but also if you want to do the whole idea of mastery over time, it's really easy to come up with a second version of a test, because it's pulling from the bank randomly. You're saying pull this number of questions of this caliber and this many from this, and so on. It makes it really easy. You just have to invest the time in the bank.
Yeah, and I really like, I think it'll be amazing for making your final exam, because you'll have all these test banks to pull from, and you can really be creative about that. And I think you make a great point about PLC work, is that people should make sure that they're saving them at the district level, so that, if we're really going to be a district that believes in a guaranteed education, that everyone should get the same education, this is going to be great for our PLC work, that we can all be working on the same quizzes, using the same material.
Agreed. Creating quiz banks is clearly no small task. I asked Chris to share his experience with making quiz banks and what the interest was with other teachers at his site to use quiz banks. Here is the rest of my interview with Chris.
I think once a teacher actually uses it, I think they're quick to jump on board. Some teachers are hesitant to start because they're feeling like it's technology and it's a lot of work on the front end. because you are having to set this stuff up, and actually writing a test does take quite a lot longer. But once you give the assignment of the test, on the back end, I think it's definitely much quicker to grade, obviously. And I think once you see the students actually working through and you look around and you say, wow, the kids are actually engaged, it's useful. And just doing it, I think you start to get much more comfortable. Maybe the first one is a little rough, but once you've assigned 1 or 2 or 3 assignments, then it becomes much easier. So in our PLC, we offer, there's 1 or 2 other teachers that really do use Neo quizzes a lot, and we offer the information to other teachers. Sometimes they're hesitant to do it, but I think in the end, I don't think there's been anyone that's tried it and said, you know what, this is not for me. This is just not working. It's not helpful in the classroom. I think everyone that's done it does it more.
Yeah, that's great. So is there anything else that you want to share in terms of how you're using it or what you like about it?
Well, I think that I've spent a lot of time with it, and I know that it does a lot, but I also feel like there's so much more. I feel like I've just scratched the surface. So the more people that use it, they can share what they've learned. I've tried to there's survey questions I know that you can do with Neo. There's discussions you can have with Neo. There's just a lot out there. So I'm hopeful that other teachers will use what we have and then share it with me. The more people that are using it, I think it really makes our department and our district stronger, if you can share those ideas.
Neo has come a long way. And as Chris mentioned, sharing what we are doing with colleagues and other teachers can help students on a much larger scale across the district. Before we conclude this episode, we thought we would quickly share 2 other Neo features that are worth mentioning. The first one is the Proctoring Tab for online or essay assignments and quizzes that allows you to restrict students' access to assignments. There are 3 kinds of restrictions you can enable. You can provide an access code for the assignment so that you can control when students take the assessment in your class. Students can't access the assessment without a code. You can generate a new code at the end of the assessment so that the codes can't be shared with other students that were absent. You can also restrict the access date so that the assignment can be given, but students are restricted from accessing the assignment before the start time. You can even go to the extent of only allowing students to access the assessment for certain IP addresses.
For the second one, if you haven't used the student commenting feature in Neo, it's definitely something you should check out. It allows students to comment and give feedback on other students' work. When you create your assignment, under the Options tab, you can check the box that says Allow Students to Comment. Students can see each other's submissions and give constructive feedback on each other's work. I personally use this feature a lot because I think the product students create is much better when the students know that the audience is more than just their teacher and that their peers will be looking at their work. On the teacher side, when you go to grade a student's submission, you can see the comments given by other students with their names along with the comments received next to the submission.
This concludes our episode on Neo and some of the assignment features it has to offer. We hope you had some takeaways and that you were able to gain some insights and ideas on how you might be able to use Neo in a new way with your classes.
And we'd like to thank Lera Wilbanks and Chris Reussner for their time and for sharing with us today. If you have any additional questions, you can reach out to any of them for more information about the Neo assignment that sparks your fancy, or you can contact your tech coach or tech mentor for assistance.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. If you like what you heard, consider giving us a 5-star review. It helps others find us when searching through educational podcasts. Follow us or reach out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at SBUSD Podcast, or send an email to podcast@sbunified.org. Join us for our next episode, where we will be focusing on social emotional learning and what our district is doing to help support SEL.
Until next time, this is the Santa Barbara Unified Looped In podcast.
Connecting educators, sharing ideas, and improving practices throughout our district.